The house on Candler Street was small, with white-painted wood siding flaking in patches, and a porch that sagged slightly to the left. Wind chimes made of driftwood and rusted keys clinked softly in the breeze, their sound almost too gentle for the heaviness inside. On the porch sat a pair of weathered rocking chairs, their paint faded to a bluish gray. The front yard was littered with damp leaves, and a child's plastic tricycle, one wheel broken, leaned forgotten against the fence. It was October, and the morning fog made everything seem like it was holding its breath. Inside, the kitchen was cramped but familiar. Yellowed cabinets lined the wall, their knobs mismatched. One a ceramic flower, another just a bent nail. The linoleum floor was peeling at the corners, revealing layers of color beneath, like memories refusing to be buried. On the stove sat a chipped kettle with a floral pattern faded from years of steam, its whistle broken so it only hissed. The smell of cinnamon and burnt toast clung to the air, like someone trying too hard to recreate warmth. Nora Ellington stood barefoot on the cold kitchen floor, her dark auburn hair tied into a loose braid that fell over one shoulder. She wore a thick knitted cardigan in deep green frayed at the cuffs, and a long beige cotton dress stained at the hem. Her hands, pale and delicate, clutched a ceramic mug with a crack near the lip, her favorite despite the flaw. Her face bore the kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from caring too much for too long. She stared at the wall clock, stuck forever at 6:17. In the living room, little Caleb lay sprawled across a brown corduroy couch with stuffing poking through the arms. His cheeks were flushed from sleep, and his light brown curls stuck to his forehead in damp spirals. He wore a gray t-shirt, too big for his frame, with a tear just below the collar, and blue pajama pants decorated with faded astronauts. On the coffee table, a bowl of dry cereal sat untouched next to a plastic dinosaur missing a leg. A cartoon played softly on the television, casting blue flickers across the walls. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that held its breath after a scream. The kind that settled in the corners and watched. Nora leaned against the counter, her eyes fixed on the hallway where a pair of work boots once waited every night. Dust had begun to gather in the places he used to move. Outside, the fog lifted slowly, revealing the cracked sidewalk, the mailboxes leaning, the town waking without urgency. Inside, the woman and her son sat in the echo of a life that used to feel whole. The morning Leo Matheson was taken, the clouds hung low like they knew what was coming. He had just stepped out of the shower, towel wrapped around his waist, damp footprints trailing across the wood floor. The smell of soap and motor oil still lingered on his skin. Caleb was in the backyard, laughing as he tried to catch a moth with a mason jar. Nora stood in the doorway, phone trembling in her hand. The knock came sharp, too formal for such a quiet street. 2 officers stood at the door, one tall with a clipboard, the other short with a hand resting on his holster. Nora could hear her pulse in her ears as Leo opened the door, face confused, hair still dripping. "Is there a problem?" he asked, voice calm but already wary. Caleb peeked through the screen, his jar slipping from his hands. Leo was barefoot when they cuffed him, the cuffs clinking louder than the wind chimes outside. Nora watched from behind the couch, the wool of her sweater clenched in her fists. She didn't say a word. Not when they read his name, not when he looked back with eyes full of disbelief. The screen door creaked and slammed shut. The porch that once welcomed him now felt like a farewell stage. Caleb didn't cry, he froze. His small hands clenched at the sides of his pajama pants, eyes wide and unblinking. "Where's Daddy going?" he asked, but Nora couldn't answer. She knelt, hugged him tightly, but her chest felt hollow. In the distance, the police car turned onto Maple Drive, leaving behind silence, confusion, and a child's jar rolling slowly on the porch. The lid clicked shut on nothing. Later that day, Nora scrubbed the kitchen counter until her knuckles turned red. The sponge tore on the edge of the sink where Leo once sharpened knives. The coffee pot had boiled dry, the bottom scorched. Outside, the rocking chair moved gently in the wind, not from weight but from memory. The clock still read 6:17, as if time had decided to stop believing in them too. And the weeks that followed, Nora found herself writing, not stories but confessions. She used thick paper, creamy and lined, and a fountain pen Leo once gave her on their anniversary. Every letter began with, "Dear Leo," and every word that followed came soaked in ink and apology. The envelopes were sealed with trembling fingers, some with lipstick smudges, others with dried tears. She mailed one every Friday. The mailbox stood at the end of the driveway, leaning slightly left like everything else in her life. Its red flag was chipped, the hinge rusted, squeaking every time she raised it. Sometimes she walked barefoot to it, no matter the cold, like pain would bring her clarity. The letters left. But nothing came back. The silence was a cruel kind of punctuation. One day, the mail came with an envelope addressed in her own handwriting, unopened. Returned to sender. Inmate refused. The ink on her message had run slightly, as if even the paper wanted to cry. She sat on the porch steps with the letter on her lap, her cardigan sleeves stretched over her fingers. Caleb played in the grass, unaware that hope had just been returned with postage. That night she gathered all the unsent letters from her drawer, 17 of them. She laid them on the kitchen table like bodies waiting for burial. One by one she lit the edge of each with a match, watching the flame eat her words. The smell of burning ink filled the room. The last letter, the very first one she wrote, she couldn't burn. She folded it and placed it in Leo's empty work boot. The boot sat beside the door like he might walk in any moment. Dust had begun to form in its creases. Caleb tried to slip his feet into them once, laughing when they swallowed his legs whole. Nora smiled, but it cracked her. Even ash carries weight when the fire never had a chance to end something properly. And some flames you choose to keep. The cabinet in the hallway had a chipped edge from when Leo dropped a wrench during their first winter in the house. "I'll fix it tomorrow," he had said, brushing her hair behind her ear. That tomorrow never came. Instead, it became the altar for missing gloves, broken toys, and memories they didn't know where else to put. Nora never stopped looking at that corner. Caleb, now 7, spent most of his afternoons curled beside it, coloring in silence. His drawings were always of tall men with tool belts, standing beside small boys with curly hair. One day she found him with duct tape and a screwdriver trying to patch the cabinet. "If I fix it, can he come home?" he asked without lifting his eyes. Nora knelt and helped him anyway. The tape didn't hold. The chip remained. But for a moment they both believed in make-believe repairs. Nora looked around at the house. The loose stair rail, the flickering hallway bulb, the leaky kitchen faucet. Leo had promised to fix all of them. His toolbox still sat in the laundry room, untouched, as if it were sacred. Some wounds stay open out of loyalty. That night, the bulb in the kitchen finally died. Nora stood on a stool trying to change it, arms shaking from strain. The glass slipped and shattered on the floor. Caleb came running, only to freeze at the doorway. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, but blood welled from a cut on her palm. "It's fine," she lied, sweeping the shards into a dustpan full of yesterdays. The next morning she finally opened the toolbox. It smelled of steel and motor oil like Leo. Her fingers traced each tool as if greeting old friends. She found the right bulb, the right wrench, the right strength. And with each repair the house sighed in relief. But nothing she fixed filled the space where he used to breathe. It was late autumn when Leo returned. The trees along the hills of Asheville were burnt orange and red, their leaves carpeting the sidewalks in silence. He stepped off a faded Greyhound bus, wearing a worn denim jacket too thin for the mountain air, jeans torn at one knee and old boots crusted in dried mud. His hair was shorter now, streaked with silver at the temples. His eyes scanned the station, cautious, like a soldier who had seen too much. Nora didn't come to meet him. Instead, it was Ray, his former boss, waiting with a paper cup of gas station coffee and a nod that said, "We're not gonna talk about it." Leo rode passenger in Ray's pickup, staring out the window at the town he no longer recognized. The shops had new awnings. The high school had been repainted. But the weight in his chest was the same. Heavy. Constant. Ray dropped him off 3 blocks away from Candler Street. "Thought you'd want to walk the rest," he said, eyes kind but guarded. Leo nodded, clutching his duffel bag. He walked slowly, boots scuffing against uneven pavement, passing neighbors who pretended not to see him. The wind carried the scent of pine and chimney smoke. His breath was visible in the cold, like all the things he still couldn't say. When he reached the house, he didn't knock. He just stood at the edge of the porch, one hand on the railing, eyes fixed on the screen door. Nora stood inside, hidden behind the curtain, holding a dish rag she hadn't realized she was squeezing. Caleb sat cross-legged in the living room, building a Lego tower. No one moved. Not even the wind chimes dared to speak. Finally, Nora opened the door. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She just said, "You can sleep in the guest room." Leo nodded and stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath his weight, familiar and foreign at the same time. He smelled the same cinnamon in the air, the same quiet judgment in the walls, and the same longing that had never really left. Dinner that night was quiet, too quiet. Nora served spaghetti with store-brand marinara and dry Parmesan flakes, the kind that stuck in your throat. Caleb chewed quickly, eyes flicking between his parents like a referee. Leo twirled his fork slowly, elbows on the table, shoulders hunched in shame or exhaustion. The clink of silverware against ceramic was the only sound. No one mentioned Grace. Nora wore a slate gray sweater over a long black skirt, her feet in wool socks, her hair pinned back in a rushed bun. Leo had changed into a black t-shirt and sweatpants Ray had lent him. They hung loose on his frame. Caleb wore a hoodie 2 sizes too big with a dinosaur patch peeling off the front. His hands were sticky with marinara, and he kept wiping them on a napkin folded too many times. Everything felt too clean, too rehearsed. The kitchen light flickered once. Nora reached up and tapped the glass with her fingernail and it steadied. Leo stared at her hand longer than necessary, the same hand that once held his face like he was something precious. Now it held distance. Cold, porcelain distance. "How was school?" Nora asked finally. Caleb shrugged. "We made volcanoes. Mine exploded all over Mrs. Atkins." Leo chuckled softly and the sound startled everyone. It had been years since they'd heard him laugh. Nora froze, spaghetti halfway to her mouth. Caleb blinked. "I guess I still got timing," Leo muttered, staring down at his plate. Nora didn't respond. She took another bite instead, chewing the silence like stale bread. After dinner, Caleb curled up on the couch with a blanket and a flashlight, flipping through a comic book. Leo cleared the table, washed the dishes in silence. Nora dried them with a rag that used to be part of their wedding quilt. She never told him she'd repurposed it. Some fabric holds more than memory. It holds what never got said. A week later, while looking for a board game, Caleb opened the hall closet and found the box labeled "Vote." Inside were old photos, hospital bracelets, a paintbrush still stained with dried blue acrylic, and a sketchbook bound in cracked leather. "What's this?" he asked. Nora stood frozen at the doorway, her breath catching. "That's something your father left behind." That evening, Leo sat on the back porch, smoking a cigarette with trembling fingers. He hadn't smoked in years, but some habits are buried, not dead. The porch had new steps built last spring by Nora's brother. The wood was lighter, cleaner, unfamiliar. Caleb brought out the sketchbook and sat beside him. "You used to paint?" he asked, flipping through the pages slowly. Leo stared at a half-finished landscape. The backyard in summer, before the storm, before the arrest. The colors were vibrant, but the strokes were rough, unfinished. "I was trying to remember how it felt to belong somewhere," Leo said. Caleb didn't answer. He simply traced one of the brush strokes with his finger and handed it back like he was returning something sacred. The next day, Leo found an easel in the garage, old, dusty, legs bent. He straightened it, brought it into the guest room and set up the canvas. He mixed the paints using his calloused hands, the scent of turpentine filling the air. The house smelled different with art in it. Not better. Just less heavy. Caleb watched from the doorway, arms crossed, unsure. Nora passed by later with a laundry basket, pausing briefly at the door. She saw Leo painting a single oak tree. Its branches reached too far. Its roots disappeared off the canvas. She recognized it immediately. It was the tree outside their window, the one they used to sit beneath back when they still believed in seasons that ended softly. She walked on without a word. The storm came in fast, wind howling through the trees, rain slapping the windows like accusations. Caleb ran through the hallway, squealing with delight, a blanket over his head like a cape. Nora hurried to shut the kitchen window, slipping slightly on the wet tile. Leo reached her just in time to catch her arm. They stood too close for too long. Her shirt clung to her arms from the rain. His eyes searched her face, not for forgiveness, just recognition. She pulled away gently and wiped her hands on a towel. "I'm fine," she said. He nodded, but his hands stayed clenched. Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains. Inside, the tension crackled worse than the lightning. That night, the power went out. Candles were lit, thick white ones pulled from drawers, some scented with vanilla, others plain. The house glowed gold in the darkness, flickering shadows dancing across the walls. Leo sat on the floor with Caleb, building a fort with couch cushions and blankets. Nora watched from the kitchen, a glass of wine untouched in her hand. For a moment it looked like the past, like those nights before everything shattered. Caleb giggled as Leo growled like a monster, tickling him under the blankets. Nora leaned against the doorframe, fighting the warmth in her chest. Her cardigan smelled like old perfume. The wine glass fogged slightly in her grip. Nothing was okay. But it wasn't all broken either. At bedtime, Caleb hugged Leo tightly. "Don't go again," he whispered. Leo kissed his forehead, heart splitting open. "I'll try," he answered, but his voice cracked on the promise. Nora heard it from the hallway, tears already pooling. She placed the wine glass in the sink and let the storm pass outside, because the one inside had already begun to rain. The suitcase wasn't full. Just jeans, a jacket, 2 shirts, and the sketchbook. Leo zipped it up quietly in the guest room, the soft scrape of the zipper louder than any argument. Nora leaned against the wall outside, barefoot, wearing the same cardigan she wore the day he left. Her face was calm, too calm. Inside her the ocean roared. "I can't stay," Leo said, stepping into the hallway, bag in hand. "Not because I don't want to, but because I already left once. And I think, maybe I never came back." Nora nodded, eyes red but dry. She looked older now. Not in wrinkles but in weight. A kind of knowing that doesn't fade. "This time," she said, "I won't stop you." Caleb sat on the bottom step of the staircase, clutching the dinosaur patch she'd finally stitched back onto his hoodie. "You'll write?" he asked. Leo knelt and kissed his son's knuckles. "Every week," he promised. "Even if you don't write back." Caleb nodded, but his grip didn't loosen. Nora turned away before her son could see her sob. Outside the air was cold but clear. No fog. No storm. Just quiet clarity. Leo walked to the corner of the street, then turned back one last time. The porch light glowed warm behind Nora. She didn't wave. But she didn't close the door either. Some doors stay open just wide enough for memory to pass through. And some hearts too. Inside, Nora found his coffee mug still on the counter. Chipped, stained, and loved. She picked it up, ran her thumb along the crack, and placed it in the cupboard behind the others. Not to hide it. Just to keep it close. Some things we don't throw out. Not because we can't. But because they meant something once and still do. Time passed in rhythms, not events. The tricycle was finally thrown out. The cabinet was replaced. But the chipped corner was saved and placed on a shelf. A reminder. Caleb started drawing again, now with trees, stars, and people with open hands. Nora returned to her old bookstore job part-time. She smiled more. Not because she forgot, but because she survived. In the spring, she repainted the kitchen, a soft moss green. The new curtains fluttered gently with the breeze. She replaced the linoleum with wood-look vinyl, each board snapped in with stubborn pride. The kettle still hissed instead of whistling. But she liked it that way. It was honest. Like her. Sometimes Caleb asked about Leo. She never lied. He loved you. He just didn't know how to stay. They read letters every Saturday, most arriving late, always signed with a sketch of a tree. Caleb pinned them on the corkboard in the hallway. Each drawing a little different. Each one still growing. One day she found Caleb painting by the window. His strokes were clumsy but vibrant. He didn't try to copy his father. He painted what he saw. The yard, the mailbox, the light on her face. She kissed the top of his head and stood behind him, heart full. "You're good at that," she said. He was too. Caleb smiled. "Yeah. But I use my own colors." And Nora realized then, love doesn't always end in reunion. Sometimes it ends in resilience. In pieces rearranged. In quiet acceptance. And in a life that wasn't what she wanted, but was entirely her own.